I'm Danny Dunson, and this is how I create.
Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else. Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with art historian Danny Dunson. If you've missed part 1 of our discussion, go ahead and listen to episode 9. Today, we dig a little deeper in Danny's life. We talk about his inspirations, about his difficulties as a student. At the age of 43, Danny was diagnosed with a learning challenge, which has changed the way he sees himself and how he now pursues scholarship. Danny has several projects coming up, including an art residency program aimed to support and to build up Black artists. Today, we continue our conversation on how to decolonize the mind and to cancel looking for love and looking for affirmation outside of ourselves. Enjoy this conversation with Danny, and I'll see you soon. At what point did you move from just the doing, and at what point did you really have to listen to your inner voice that was pushing you towards the work that you should have been doing all this time, but you weren't listening?
Well, as a kid, I was an artist. I grew up artist, art. I was a drawer, painter, sketcher. I would draw on my parents' walls. They would just be so angry at me, but then they would look at the image and just leave it up where I drew on the wall because it was a good drawing. So I had all of that happening. Something happened with me academically, maybe around 8 or 9, where I just couldn't focus anymore. Maybe even earlier, I want to say around 7. I just had absolutely no focus when it came to doing the work. Math was incredibly hard for me. I would draw clothing on numbers instead of adding them. I would just start drawing clothes and the whole test would be over. And the number 7 would be in the first goal and the number 8 would have on a top hat and a suit I designed, but no math problem solved. Since I've always been loquacious and I've always had some kind of at least perceived eloquence about the way I spoke, any type of learning challenge was looked over at this time. And I wasn't hyperactive. I'm still not hyperactive, but the thoughts were hyperactive internally, that interiority again. But because I, again, came from this kind of upper middle class family and sister was smart, my brother was like genius, and I was in the middle, and no one saw that I needed some type of attention. And it went on and on. I was deemed as lazy for so long. I had internalized I was just a disgrace to Booker T. Washington, a disgrace to W.E.B. Du Bois, a disgrace to the street hustler who would have been like, man, if I had a dad and mom like yours, I would have been doing something. I wasn't doing anything. I was in this limbo. So I was getting D's. I was getting C minuses. I was placed in advanced placement classes because I can test out. I was always intelligent. But when it came to turn around with a deliverable, a paper, sitting through an entirely too long of a test, whatever the case may be, memorizing something, I couldn't do it. So I got kind of ignored and I learned to mask myself through that inadvertently. I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. So by the time I graduated high school, I was very nervous about college because I said, oh God, this thing would come up. So this thing, I would call it, would be, I would have this initial shot of adrenaline in the beginning of a project and I can do it. And then if it was usually the last minute, if I had procrastinated to the last second, I could do it, that adrenaline rush would come. So I've always depended on that to get me through this weird thing that was going on that I had no language for, no way to even tell my parents. It wasn't that I was trying to hide it. I just thought this is just something I have to grapple with. I can't even put it to words. So I studied fashion design at 2 universities in Chicago, reputable art schools. I dropped out both times when sewing got difficult or when geometric shapes got difficult or when I couldn't even sketch. lack of focus. And I just, again, oh God, I'm so lazy. So at this time, my self-esteem is plummeting and my sense of self was plummeting. So it went on and on. And then I said, okay, I'll be a teacher. So I studied education at Indiana University, went very far, dropped out. I would get to my third year of 4 different universities and drop out. And mind you, I didn't have financial aid. My parents didn't qualify for that. So they were paying out the pocket. And I was dropping out in all these different schools, but they never gave up on me. And at some point, I just said, okay, maybe school's not for me. However, I remembered as early as high school, because I went to a special school for the visual and performing arts from 6th grade to 12th grade, Emerson School for Visual and Performing Arts in Gary, Indiana. This amazing place. I started taking art history. I think I took it twice in middle school and in high school. And those were the times I could get an A. For some reason, the object with the text would help me remember. And I would have my hand up first to answer every question. I was finally not the most social or not considered the most well-spoken. I was actually the smartest finally, the nerd, and I would know the answer. So that went on. And when I went into college, and I would end up dropping out and I would flunk out of classes and have to take classes over. And the only class I could get through was art history. So after leaving fashion design and trying different things, I studied business in college. I've lost count of the universities, but anyway, I went into banking. First, I was in retail, a couple of established places here in Chicago. I had a fashion background, I had an art background. That was great. I had the mouth that could speak and sell, and then banking. And then I went back into retail. It was when Obama became president that the real estate crisis happened and the recession hit. And I went from making a gainfully employed salary to nothing. And my father said, who was very sick at the time, it just started, his kidneys began to fail. And he said, I want you to go back to school. This is a great time to go back to school in the middle of this recession. Either start a business or go back to school. And I said, well, I'm not starting a business. He said, no, I think you should go back to school and study art history. You've always loved it. And if you go back, I'll pay for it. And I said, Dad, you can't pay for it. You're sick. I mean, you don't even know how much time you have left. Let me, And he said, no, your mom and I want you to go back to school. We think this is the time. And I said, I've tried before. That thing, and I'm thinking to myself, that thing is going to pop up and I'm not going to be able to get through it. And for some reason, I went ahead and did it. And I stopped working and I went to school and I wanted to start over. I had hundreds of credits I could have transferred from any institution. And I started all the way from the beginning. And UIC accepted me because I always had a little bit of a gift for writing. And I wrote a compelling entrance letter. And I was able to focus enough that time to do it. Like I never knew when that focus thing was going to come. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it came through. And I started my academic student career at UIC. And there I found some amazing professors. One in particular, her name is Hannah Higgins, and I always call her by name. Hannah Higgins is a art historian extraordinaire. She's a white woman who saw me in her class one day, first day of class, and she said, you, come to my office. And I said, okay, after class. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, huh? And she speaks sometimes in this confrontational way in order to spur a response. And I said, I'm taking your class. She said, no. I mean, what are you doing here? She said, you're a little older than the other students. You're in art history. You have a story. I want to know what it is. And I started to tell her, and she said, listen, I don't know much about Black art. It's not my specialty. She said, but I know more than you know. And I'm going to teach you everything I know. And you're going to get this degree. She said, I see something in you. And that's,
I was going to say that you didn't go back until you were about 36 or 37, right?
Yeah, I was 36 when I went back, or 35, I can't remember. I think it was 36 when I went back, yeah. And so, but I was masquerading as a 26-year-old because I look younger than I am, especially back then. So a lot of people had no idea I was that old. but she could see I wasn't 18 and 19 like my counterparts were. So I told her my story and she was like, okay, we're going to get through this. And we did. Not only is she, I mean, she could teach any discourse in art history. She knows a ton about the Black art. She was the one who had to tell me, stop looking at things through this westernized, colonized framework. Your art is different. You come from a different place and you have to access these scholars and you have to, and when she said different, it never equated to inferior. It always meant, in my mind, the way she would say just that word different meant it's not equal. It's just amazing. If it's to say, instead of thinking that something's superior, start to think that your production, your ancestral place is superior to all that's happened to you. It's bigger than that. And she did that. She did that. And she started bringing in guest professors who completely worked in Black art. It was just like you said, Western art program, you know, and my third year came up and that thing came back. And I got a C in her class. Now, at this point, I was winning scholarships. My dad was trying to pay for books. And I said, no, I have a scholarship for that. I was growing and I was a lot older. I was more mature. I was not doing well in that year. And she said, you have to get off campus. She said, you have to go study abroad. She said, this is it. Get away from here, study. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to Rome. I'm thinking about this project of extracting Black figures from Renaissance and Baroque and perhaps even 17th and 18th and early 19th century art. I just kind of want to do this project. She said, fine. Well, that trip to Rome got canceled. And I ended up in the study abroad office talking to the director. And he said, how edgy are you? How cool are you? I said, what are you talking about? I'm cool, I'm edgy. He said, go to Ghana. Ghana has an arts and culture transformative study abroad program. Go there. And I think this is where you should go. And I said, Ghana in Africa? Now, my parents were Pan-African. I knew of Kwame Nkrumah and Frederick Douglass and everybody within the same kind of story intersecting. So I knew all this conceptually, but still because of the stigma of a disparate culture and the disparate people and all of that, I was afraid to go to Africa. So I came home and my father said, oh my God, you have to go. This is it. This is what it, and my father's, so at this point, my dad his kidneys have been failing maybe 3.5 years at this point. I said, Dad, and he was in and out of the hospitals. It was a rough time for all of us. And I said, Dad, you're so sick. I don't want to go that far away, you know. And he said, no, we'll do FaceTime or whatever. But if you go, you'll see, you'll see Kwame Nkrumah. I said, Dad, that man has been dead so long. He said, no, but you'll see his spirit there. You'll see his presence there. You'll see connections that you come from that we could never explain or teach you. I have this feeling you should go. So I went into the study abroad office and I said, okay, I want to go. And they said, well, you have about 45 minutes to write an essay because you took so long to give us your answer. Today is the deadline to submit an essay to get like a $10,000 scholarship. That adrenaline came, again, that rush. And I said, okay. And I cranked out an essay, got the scholarship, and I went to Ghana for about 4.5 months, and it did change my life. And I stopped that project of looking towards European art to try to explain my humanity. That's what I was seeking to do. I was trying to say, I know we're human, I know we exist, you even painted us. Then when I got to Ghana and realized there is a technology of visual work that had been working in fiber arts, woven grass, painted images, pottery, sculpture, song, story, ritual, religious ritual, tribal and ethnic group rituals, and so many different things that didn't separate art. It all had, if you were going to make a visual art piece, that art had to represent song, story, dance, royalty, the farmer, the goat herder, the chief, it all had to be embodied in this object. No one made anything for waste. So everything from the fabric you wore to the currency of a cowrie shell or a glass trade bead, or the trading of animals and farming your own land and trading things to receive something else, this kind of equity within the practice of a society that was defined, created by my ancestors, parts of the ancestry. I've never done a DNA test. I never will. I don't need to. I know that I am a hybrid of several fragments of people that were displaced throughout of the continent of Africa, not just West, but so many people got entangled within that slavery, enslavement, trade, that I know wherever I touch my feet on the continent, it starts to feel like home, from north to south, east to west. And I don't need to pay a system that broke that away from me to tell me that I have 10% that, 20% this, 20% European too. I have the documents that say all of that, but I know who I am because when I get there, I feel alive. So you don't need a DNA test. You just need to go. So I started thinking about art differently, and I started thinking about contemporary art. And I thought about how contemporary art within the Western white canon European art still comes from Africa. When you think of the work of Deschamps with his ready-made, flipping over in a urinal and making it art. Oh, please, that's been done for thousands of years in places that we're from. You think of Picasso with his Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. I think I'm saying that incorrectly, but
Les Demoiselles d'Avignon.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah.
These women with these African masks over their faces. When you think of so many different artists of this time that really got ahead and critically acclaimed, all really pretty much stole from this production. And that's why, again, you can keep stealing from something. If it doesn't know its worth, it becomes a really wealthy resource, but you get the credit if you keep stealing from it. So you have to suppress that worth. What happened to me was what I feel has to happen to all of us. My worth paradigm completely shifted, and I no longer needed to look through the Western canon to find my identity. And I no longer needed to extract any semblance of humanity through their eyes. I just needed to stand in the power of my own making and my own being that was already flowing through my blood, through my spirit, through my body. And it created my interest in this contemporary Black moment, what I consider transnational Blackness. And that's why I want to bring this story. I don't like it when people say, oh, you elevate Black artists. How can I elevate something that's already high? I don't elevate anything. I focus, I highlight it, I show it to you maybe because you don't know, but I have to reach up to try to talk about some of these things within this Black art dialogue and discourse, and so do you. So if anything that's getting elevated is yourself, by having the privilege and the honor and the fortune to engage with it, to collect it, to buy it, to see it in a museum. That's what the elevation comes from, what happens to you. You don't have to elevate Black people, and you sure as hell don't have to elevate their productions. It's already up there.
You made me cry. Yeah, you made me cry because you said something that touched me. As a kid, I don't think I'm particularly smart, but I know how to study and I know how to work hard. And so I figure like those two things have carried me, and I know how to not give up. And when you were chatting and talking about your journey, one of the things that became really clear to me is that you're a master of invention, listening to your inner self and realizing when something isn't right. And when you say that the third year is when you would give up, I don't know. I think of it as in the third year you listened.
Yeah, I did listen. And I have to interject. I went on a bit of a tangent of of discovery, which is still an important tangent, but what was discovered much later after I went back to Ghana to do my Fulbright. And I came back and I did that enormous exhibition that stayed in place for a year with 400 people at the opening. Colin Kaepernick came to see it a couple of days after the opening. All these amazing African American and other diasporians showed up at this exhibition where they got to see these castles and these dungeons truly activated with the truth and the presence of these people. Once I got home from that, I was depleted. I had nothing left. Had not had a Chicago winter for 2 years because I was in Morocco living for 6 months before that, and then a year in Ghana. I had not had a winter, and when I came home, close to winter time, I kind of sunk into I guess you would say like a seasonal type depression. And within 2018, I had some opportunities to write for some major publications, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't create the deliverable, and that thing came back. And it scared me. And I said, this is so big. If I write for this publication, which everyone reads from a major city in the US, I would really have made it. And I couldn't make it. After 2 months of not turning in the deliverable, I had to let the project go. And I started doing WebMD tests. So those types of things that let you know if something was wrong. Because I said, I don't know what this is. And I took all these tests because I didn't know if I was dealing with depression, like, oh, wow, maybe I'm bipolar, or maybe I have dyslexia, or maybe something was up and I couldn't quite, it didn't let me rest, which was also that third year that I was talking about. That third year was that when I would realize something's not quite right and I would just retreat. This time I had no place to go. I was afraid of my future. I was like, I'm now in my early 40s. Okay. So I did all these tests and all of them came back saying I had ADHD. And I said, what the heck is this? Now I heard of this like in joking ways or in passing, but I didn't really know what it is. So I go to my doctor and I tell him, and I just tell the story. He's an African American doctor. He's a very young doctor, but he thought I was younger than him. And I could tell he had probably freshly gotten out of his residency. And he was saying, oh, I don't want you to think of anything that you have a difference or any type of negative. No, don't think of it that way. He said, people don't get Fulbrights and have any type of disparities or just deficiencies. No, you just have to hustle a little bit harder, just bear down. And, sometimes life can be challenging, but you have to he acted as if I had not been through life. He had totally disregarded what I was telling him. And he pretty much essentially, in the rhetoric that he was using, was telling me I have to pray this away. And I thought to myself, this is why so many Black people do not access mental health. Because within that master narrative, we are taught to only think about our bodies. So you can have a high blood pressure pill. You can have your insulin, your chemotherapy, whatever the case may be, to keep that body working. But nothing has been more traumatized within health or anything else than the mind. And if you're thinking about those who need mental health, who would need it more than those who have been first mentally treated so badly for centuries? It's because we focus on that body. Again, we focus on everything that happened to us, the beating, all those things. But before a hair is disturbed on my head, what happens on the inside from someone declaring I'm not human and having complete agency over me, taking me from my home, taking me to a place where I have no right to even breathe when I want to breathe. The psychological, mental damage that happens there is far more violent than anything you can do to this body. So why don't we have treatment? Why don't we access it first? Because the master narrative says this is for rich folks. This is for white people. It even engenders it. Oh, it's for rich white people laying on a sofa in Manhattan, in a Manhattan therapist's office, those types of things we see in movies. But we have to access our mental health. And there's different ways. I'm not here to say this treatment's for you or that treatment's for you, but we have to access that. Those who have been the most afflicted mentally have no access to this. And that's horrific. And it's a crime against humanity. So I left that doctor, did some more research, and it landed me right back in my alma mater of University of Illinois at Chicago, where they had an adult testing center within their School of Psychology and the medical building and all of that stuff. And I went for 3.5 months getting tested for everything. And I told them my story with the doctor, and they said, okay, well, we're going to review you for everything. So they went over psychological evaluation, physical things to see if I had dexterity, if I can understand depth of space and vision, color memory, factual memory. I tested for about 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, twice a week for 3 months. It was exhausting. And then that January in 2019, I got my results back. And they said, okay, you do have ADHD. And I started crying tears of joy because I had researched enough to know that there's assistance, there's help, there's things you can do about it. And they said, are these tears of joy? Or are you? I'm like, yes. I'm like, listen, at this point I was 40, almost 40. I was turning 43 that week. I said, I'm 43 years old. This is news. And they were like, look at I had a complete, like a booklet of all of my testing results. And I saw that I had a learning disability in math. Well, no wonder I was trying to draw clothing on them. No wonder I have had to take every math class from high school to college 2 or 3 times. I'm great at arithmetic. I'm great at percentages because I like to shop. But once it gets to a complex equation where I have to remember and balancing, I couldn't do it. And they explained that to me. And then I kept reading and it said superior, 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 above average, strongly above average. I said, what is this? And she was like, it's exactly what it says. Cognitive thinking, writing, analysis, comprehension, speaking, orating and speaking, listening to someone else speak. She just went down the list where I was off the charts in intellectual capability. So I found out I wasn't lazy. I just had a different way of thinking. And in order for me to work within the modern way of working, that I would need counseling, I would need treatment, and that could either be medicinal or other types of therapies. But I realized that I can start moving ahead. And that's when the switch was really flipped. And I went back to Hannah Higgins, my professor who I mentioned, and I had lunch with her and I said, I have to tell you, because she said, when are you starting your PhD? When are you going to do it? Like, let's do it, or your grad school, something. Like, and I was afraid to go to that next level, right? So I said, I just got tested for ADHD. And she was like, oh my God. And then she said, okay, that's great. Now we know what it is. Okay, when are you starting your PhD? And I said, I know. And she said, this is amazing because now you know, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's not why I wanted to meet and have lunch with you. They told me that since I have this and I have all the proper medical records to explain it, they said you get extra breaks, you get longer times in between classes, you get a longer time to return deliverables, you get everything you need. And I told her, I said, I wanted to thank you because you never knew this about me, but you always gave me extra time. You always gave me a longer break. And I was like in tears, and she said, okay, hey, stop all that. She said, listen, I gave you extra time because if you needed a week more, I knew it was going to be better than any other students if I had given them 3 weeks more. She said, don't ever think I did you a favor. You did me a favor by showing your greatness, not giving up on yourself. And we have worked on this together. And she said, so I asked again, when are you applying for your PhD? So that's this fall, hopefully with Northwestern.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, and it's been a major shift. I know we're wrapping it up, but I've moved from just writing. I've gone into the representational space for artists. I'm starting a new project. You're the first I'm publicly mentioning it to. Legacy Brothers has been an LLC for a long time, but we have completely activated it. I am representing artists who are not signed with galleries. Many of them are intuitive artists, another word for saying self-taught, or those who for some reason, the gallery structure or the contemporary art industry just has kind of left them out. And there's so many people doing this. There's some amazing artists who have the standard that I consider amazing art, but they're unknown and not seen. And they have found me throughout some of the years and even some recently, and they're from all over the world. And the Legacy Brothers project now, I have just started, and no one knows about this. I just started an art residency in Nigeria where I was able to pay for the studio and living space of a young artist and also represent their work. I have artists in Brazil and who just received a micro grant to, and then the Legacy Brothers Book Fund is starting where even people have donated, but as they donate money, my family and I match that to send to artists of color and students within the art world adjacent to it, such as writers or whatever, who would like a book and need additional foreign funding to just help get that text. And we send them out, and I donate it in the name of those who donated, along with my father, who gave away his books because when he was a kid and they would go into the little corner store, he and his guys, some of the guys would steal stuff. My dad would always steal a book, and he had some of those stolen books on the shelf. So we shouldn't have to steal books. You know, not everybody wants to steal candy or a piece of clothing or whatever. Some people want to really feed their mind. And until we start increasing those stories of that thirst that we all have, because we are all human, no different, no better. Some people are going to make wrong choices. Some of us are going to make better choices. But at the end of the day, that human condition is just what it is. And my dad taught me that, and he would steal books as a teenager. Even in college, he couldn't afford a book he needed. And he was at Lincoln University. He would try to sneak it under his sweater because he was the first to go to college in his family. And they had raised everything they could. There was no financial aid. My grandparents had to get all of their resources. The neighborhood had to help pay. The church had to help pay. We need to go back to that.
You're making me cry again.
So I'm so happy that I'm bringing, the website is coming forth, and I'm going to announce all the artists who are on my roster. So I will be writing everything I still write. I still work with galleries. I still work as an advisor, but I work as an advisor for clients who are interested in art at the gallery or working with my own artists who are not with the gallery or other artists that I don't represent. I still act as a liaison to connect them. I also do this foundational and altruistic element to it as well as my archives of My Granddaddy's Closet on Instagram and also Legacy Brothers. I've also started this poetic project called The Black Ethereal, which is on Instagram, where I'm trying to retreat to that place of Blackness that operates outside of racism. Not that racism doesn't exist, but it operates in a space of healing, joy, and comfort, as if you can return to this place, return to yourself before the world started to lie to you and tell you you didn't have human worth. So those are the projects I'm working on right now. I'm really excited that Legacy Brothers LLC has come to fruition. And by the way, it's accommodated my life in ways that I did not think were possible. Everything has elevated in that aspect. That I will say, because when I started to realize my worth, I didn't realize how many people were looking at my page to get free art advising. I didn't know how many people were selling work if I posted it. No one told me, and I never wanted money for that. But what happens when an artist sells work because I posted it and they don't let me know? Or if a client goes to an artist because they saw the work and they don't let me know, what happens? I don't know that I have an eye as good as that white curator, as good as that white writer, as good as that person who's had all of the privilege. I don't know. And who's not telling me? My own people. So the things you do, the things you practice, you have to do a little bit extra for other Black people. And I say, when you get out of the shower, if you're Black, put on an extra layer of lotion, put on an extra layer of shea butter. eat an extra portion of vegetables and fruit. You not only need it, and you've been through hell. Your great grandparents, your forefathers, your ancient ancestors, your brother or your sister who is still trying to get charges filed and still trying to get justice for, go through hell. Pay me more attention. And I demand that. If you are Black, you have to consider me first. And you have to consider me more than you would anybody else. So, in that being said, I have taken my own power as far as what I can do. I mean, there have been some people who collect art, some great billionaire collectors who have gone to my page to figure out what the hot artist was. But now I'm still going to post artists, but I know who the next artist that's coming. And trust me, if my eye was good for that, it's going to be even sharper and more acute for what I'm bringing to the forefront. And I'm protecting these artists. You're not going to flip their work within 5 years, less than 5 years. You're going to be able to lend these pieces when they need to be on exhibition. And by the way, when there's a book that needs to be written about them, I already know how to do that myself, so I don't have to hire anybody. So I have studio visits where I critically analyze and critique the work of these artists to bring their work to a level, because I have this art background. I went through critique in college when I dropped out that time and that time. I know what it's like to work in something, but something else to still call you. Everything that these artists are going through, I've been through in some way. I know what it's like to battle against self-doubt, to deal with oppression on the outside and then the internalized oppression on the inside. But also I know how to bring something to the forefront, and that's where the glory will be. And I'm so excited to start this project. And it's already started. I've been working over the last months. I've just been very quiet. You are the first, Martine. And now,
feels so special.
I mean, here's the thing. Now the sharks are going to start swarming. But hey, you can come. It's all right. I've made it this far, and we've all made it this far. And I think that's a story of putting words to power and self-value to power and activating it, but not just for yourself. I'm building a complete ecosystem of Black producers, producers of color, and any kind of intersection in between that wants to be a part of this. I'm here to use everything I have because I've been dedicating my life to this for a long time. So it's time for us all to come to the forefront and show the world who we are. I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. So we're gonna wrap up.
Yes.
And one of the things I'd love to ask, and selfishly, I'm going to ask you this question. Is there a book on art history that you go back to over and over again? Those of us who are interested in decolonizing our minds, is there a book that you go to help with that process?
It's a complicated thing because there's art books and then there's books that are not art books that still help with the art process. So like I mentioned— You
give us both?
Yeah, I will. Like I mentioned, Black art globally is not independent of other discourses and other subject matters. They all work together. So I constantly go to the Book of Beloved by Toni Morrison. I constantly go to the Book of Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison, and I think of these quite a bit in any type of Black artistic practice, be it visual arts or performing art or written word or anything in between, even culinary arts, whatever the case may be. I use those books. The work of Toni Morrison, I look at, gosh, there's so many artists and writers, of course, James Baldwin, but I think Toni Morrison does something visually with her words, the painting of an image more so than a lot of writers. So I think that's a really great out of the art historical or academic text. I think she works really well. So there is a book on contemporary art. There's several seminal books, but I'll just talk about one that I keep going back to, which is Bound to Appear, written by Huey Copeland, who is a PhD professor at Northwestern and in art history, who is one of my distant mentors. He's a good friend, but I haven't worked with him directly in that way, but I work with his text, his words. So that book may be out of print. It was only written, I believe, in 2015 or 2014, but if you can get a copy of that or find a digital download through one of those resources like JSTOR, I think that's a book I need to try to find and buy more copies of now. It's just very expensive, I think, right now because it is out of print. But it's the book that if you opened up my copy, it's highlighted, it's tabbed, there's notes scribbled on the side. It's a fantastic book on contemporary Black art and the history of it during a specific time of the 90s into the early 2000s. So it starts with people more like Lorna Simpson, or Glenn Ligon, and then all the way to people. It ends up with Kara Walker and some others towards the end. So it's a great introductory to this practice that I think all of us practitioners access from around the world under this name or the moniker of Black contemporary art. So I would suggest that that's Bound to Appear by Huey Copeland.
Danny, how can we stay in touch with you?
Well, Legacy Bros, Legacy BROS, which is short for brothers. So Legacy Bros at IG. Instagram is a great way. I do answer DMs. I'm slow and I'm very
I know
good
you
these days,
answer
so
my DMs.
but it took a while, and I get a lot a day, but you can always email me at legacybros@gmail.com. That's a really great way. The website is coming forth, where there will be a specific business email for inquiries and all of that. And that's coming within the next 10 to 14 business days. We're just finalizing it. But you can always reach me that way. You can see the work I do at artx.net. We are relaunching very soon with a fantastic new editorial vision. I'm happy to consult on that project and still be a partner, a co-founder with that project as we're bringing that back. And you can just look for any of my work with Sugarcane Magazine or any other types of writing journals that are out there. I'm looking forward to still work with galleries. I just finished an essay for Marianne Ibrahim Gallery, who just did the solo gallery show for Clotilde Jimenez. And that was that was such an amazing project. And I also recently did worked with him, a presentation through Zoom, and it was a great artist talk. But also I'm now working with corporations. So I just finished a Black art talk with, or should I say learning session with MasterCard employees from around the country on Black contemporary art. And there's a couple of other major corporations that have hired me and my team out to do that. So you'll see me around quite a bit. It's been a great year despite of all we've been through. And yeah, there have been so many things that have been canceled, but we have to make sure our self is not one of those things. And what's canceled is looking for love and affirmation, and from a system that depends on us not having self-love. You can't look for love there. You have to find it someplace else and affirm yourself in places that depend on you being affirmed.
We are out of time, but I just
Yes.
wanted to say that's the one piece when you were chatting earlier on about how you have to stop going to Europe to reaffirm yourself and to get experience for the art that you want to create, and that you have to be you have to go back and to your roots. And I was crying when you were saying that, because I realized that was something that I needed to hear. And I reckon that as our listeners hear your words, there's going to be a shift that's going to happen in them. And I thank you so much, Danny. I thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Stay tuned. All right.
Bye.
So great. Take care. Bye.